Imagine for a moment that everything you learned in history class about ancient Egypt is completely wrong. You were taught that the pharaohs built the Great Pyramids roughly 4,500 years ago using ropes, copper chisels, wooden ramps, and massive labor forces. But what if they didn't build them at all? What if they just found them? A controversial new study suggests the Giza Plateau isn't a 4,500-year-old tomb complex, but a 12,000-year-old legacy left behind by a lost, technologically advanced super-civilization that was wiped off the face of the Earth before written history even began. Today, we are digging into the bedrock to dismantle the timeline of human civilization. The anomaly at Giza is not just about age. It is about an impossible standard of engineering that seemingly appeared out of nowhere. The Great Pyramid consists of approximately 2.3 million individual stone blocks. While the core limestone blocks weigh a few tons each, the massive granite beams forming the roof of the king's chamber weigh up to 80 tons. These monstrous blocks were quarried in Aswan, roughly 500 miles away, transported, and then hoisted hundreds of feet into the air with a level of precision that challenges modern heavy machinery. The entire 13-acre base of the pyramid is leveled to within a fraction of an inch. The structure is aligned almost perfectly to true north, with a margin of error so small it defies the supposed primitive surveying tools of the era. It is a machine of absolute, terrifying precision. In standard historical models, human civilization is supposed to advance linearly. Technology improves over time. Methods are refined. Architecture gets better. Yet, the Egyptian pyramids present a baffling de-evolution. If you look at the pyramids built just a few centuries after Giza during the 5th and 6th dynasties, they are catastrophic failures in comparison. Pharaohs like Unas and Teti built pyramids that were smaller, cruder, and structurally unsound. Today, they are little more than crumbling mounds of mud, brick, and rubble. This presents the ultimate historical paradox. Why did ancient Egyptian engineering achieve absolute flawless perfection instantly and then immediately decline? How did the greatest builders in human history suddenly forget how to build? A newly publicized paper by Antonio Ambrosio, an independent researcher from the Autonomous University of Barcelona, attempts to answer this by proposing a radical inheritance theory. Ambrosio argues that the 4th dynasty pharaohs, Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure, did not construct the 3 main pyramids at Giza. They inherited them. According to this theory, these massive structures were already standing in the desert when the early Egyptians arrived. The pharaohs merely claimed them, cleared the sand, and attempted to copy them for their own tombs. Because they lacked the advanced technology of the original builders, their subsequent attempts during later dynasties resulted in the crumbling, inferior pyramids we see today. To support this staggering claim, Ambrosio points to a glaring absence in the archaeological record. No original royal mummies or traditional funerary artifacts have ever been discovered inside the Great Pyramids. While the mainstream consensus argues this is the result of millennia of systemic tomb robbing, alternative researchers argue that if no mummies were found, we have no definitive proof these specific megaliths were ever designed to be tombs in the first place. This inheritance theory ties directly into a concept central to ancient Egyptian mythology known as Zep Tepi, which translates to the first time. In their own ancient texts, the Egyptians described Zep Tepi as a primordial golden age, when the gods emerged from chaos and ruled directly over humanity. It was a period of perfect cosmic order that existed long before the reigns of mortal pharaohs. For decades, fringe historians and alternative archaeologists have argued that Zep Tepi was not a symbolic myth, but a literal, historical memory. They propose it refers to a highly advanced global super-civilization that existed around 10,500 BC, roughly 12,000 years ago, before being wiped out by the cataclysmic climate shifts at the end of the last ice age. The battleground for this 12,000-year-old timeline is not just in the texts, it is carved directly into the bedrock of the Giza Plateau. The most fiercely debated piece of physical evidence surrounds the Great Sphinx. The Sphinx sits inside a carved limestone enclosure. The walls of this enclosure feature deep, vertical fissures and heavy undulating weathering patterns. Alternative researchers and certain geologists argue that this specific type of weathering could only have been caused by centuries of heavy burst core, torrential rainfall cascading over the edge of the enclosure. Here is where the timeline breaks. The Sahara Desert has been hyper-arid for thousands of years. The Giza Plateau has not experienced the sustained, heavy rainfall required to cause that level of water erosion since the end of the last ice age, around 10,000 BC to 5,000 BC. Therefore, if the erosion is water-based, the Sphinx and the surrounding megalithic complex must be thousands of years older than the ancient Egyptian civilization that supposedly built it. The mainstream archaeological and geological community, however, fiercely rejects this water erosion theory. They counter with a localized, highly specific weathering mechanism known as haloclasty. Haloclasty is salt weathering. The limestone at Giza is packed with natural salt. Over the last 4,500 years, moisture from morning dew and fog has seeped into the porous rock, dissolving the salts. When the hot Egyptian sun bakes the rock during the day, the moisture evaporates and the salt crystallizes. As the salt crystals expand, they act like microscopic wedges, forcing the limestone to flake and crumble away. Wind-blown sand then scoops out the weakened rock, creating the vertical fissures that mimic water erosion. Mainstream science argues the Sphinx is exactly as old as we think it is, and the environment is simply eating it alive. But the debate doesn't stop at the Sphinx. To validate the inheritance theory and the Zep-Tepi timeline, alternative historians must dismantle the single most important piece of physical evidence linking the Great Pyramid directly to the ancient Egyptians, the Khufu cartouche. In 1837, a British explorer named Colonel Howard Vyse blasted his way into the hidden relieving chambers located directly above the King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid. Inside these dark, sealed gaps, he discovered red ochre paint daubed on the massive limestone blocks. These were quarry marks, graffiti left behind by the work gangs who hauled the stones. Crucially, among these marks was a cartouche, an oval seal containing hieroglyphs that spelled out the name of Pharaoh Khufu. For mainstream Egyptologists, this is the smoking gun. It is absolute proof that Khufu's workers built the pyramid. However, proponents of the lost civilization theory argue this cartouche is a modern forgery. They claim that Colonel Vyse, desperate to make a massive discovery to secure his legacy and funding, painted the marks himself using a rudimentary understanding of hieroglyphs. While this forgery theory is a staple of alternative history, modern Egyptology has effectively crushed it. The red ochre paint is not just on the outward-facing stones. It seeps into the microscopic cracks and joints between the massive blocks, painted in areas Vyse physically could not have reached with a brush. Furthermore, the quarry marks don't just say Khufu. They include specific names of worker crews, such as the Friends of Khufu Gang. Most importantly, the graffiti features incredibly specific Old Kingdom grammatical quirks and cursive hieratic script that were completely unknown to scholars in the 1830s. Colonel Vyse could not have faked a linguistic dialect that had not even been deciphered yet. Despite the overwhelming mainstream evidence tying Giza to the Fourth Dynasty, the inheritance theory refuses to die because the anomaly of the Great Pyramid does not exist in isolation. All around the world, researchers point to a global network of megalithic architecture that defies explanation. In Peru, Sacsayhuaman features 100-ton precision-cut interlocking blocks. In Lebanon, Baalbek's foundation holds 800-ton stones hoisted 20 feet into the air. Like Giza, later cultures built inferior structures on top of these megaliths. It raises a haunting possibility. Perhaps the Egyptians, Incas, and Romans were just squatters, building empires on the bones of a lost global super-civilization. The battle for our timeline is fought in the bedrock. Mainstream archaeology relies on quarry marks and carbon dating. The alternative is Zep-Tepi, a cataclysm-wiped civilization leaving only silent mountains of stone as their legacy. Whether built 4,500 or 12,000 years ago, Giza is a monument to lost capabilities. It proves humanity can achieve flawless perfection. and how easily that knowledge can be swallowed by the sands of time.